Good evening to everyone who's joining us. I believe it's good evening because this webinar is on what is coaching and how to become a coach. And it's been scheduled specifically for people who live in India, so it should be evening for all of you. But hello. This evening we have a panel of Coacharya associates with us. All the people that you will see on screen today are our current trainers, and they work on all different sorts of programs. So the training towards ACC, PCC, as well as MCC. So you get to hear from a whole bunch of them. They run both the face-to-face programs in India, as well as virtual global programs and virtual in India. So on your screen, you will see Shyam, Anita, Paras, Cindy, and Ram, all of who are trainers. And as they answer questions, I will ask them to introduce themselves and talk about their coaching journeys. So I won't do big introductions now. But to get started, let's kick off with the topic of our chat today. What is coaching and what does coaching mean to you? I would love for Ram, Coacharya founder, to maybe get started with that one. And you know, all coaches, when you answer the question of what is coaching and how did you become a coach, it'd be great to hear a bit about your background and the journey that you took that brought you to this point today, where you are not just coaching others actively, but you're also training others to become coaches. So Ram, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. When it was first, to be honest, I was a very accidental coach. I think it'll be much better if some of the others talk about how more structured their journey was. In my case, it came through a suggestion from someone who said basically that because of the fact that I had been a corporate leader and I had been a troubleshooter and I was capable of providing solutions and so on and so forth, I would be a great coach, which reflects the kind of, how coaching is being perceived or was certainly being perceived roughly about 8-10 years ago in India. And perhaps still is being perceived more as a solution-giving process, which is hardly any different from a mentor. But in real fact, it's totally different in the spectrum of, if one looks at solution-giving on one end of the spectrum to awareness creation rather than the spectrum, coaching lies at the far end of awareness creation, whereas mentoring, consulting, and so on lie on the solution-giving. The primary difference that I see in the way that I learn coaching and we practice coaching today, especially in Coacharya, is that when a client comes to you, the client comes with a problem, and very often the problem is something that they can consciously look at and they can see what the obstacles are in terms of looking towards the outcome for that problem. They're able to resolve it. They don't need a coach. They don't need anybody. Perhaps at best they need some kind of a mentor to talk to, someone, friend and family. But it's very often that the internal barriers are the ones which are preventing them from moving forward. And that's really where the coach comes in, or they have to go to a therapist. And the coaching is probably a far better awareness creation process than that of a therapist, because it's something that resolves it in the present moment, which an awareness towards the future, whereas therapy usually focuses on the past. So this is fundamentally what I would see as coaching, but I would like to defer to my colleagues, especially Cindy, to explain more about her own expressions of what coaching should be.
You want me to answer that, Magda?
Okay. I apologize. Please, yeah, everyone just jump in whenever you want.
Okay, lovely to meet you all and be with you. My background in coaching came from a huge interest in people development and from the field of counseling, education and development, and a few other modalities related. And then I came across this word, coaching. And what stuck out for me there was this word partnering. And I thought, now this has got my attention because it's not telling. Education is a lot about telling people what to do, and counseling as this word of helping. Yeah, the client is equally responsible for their own personal and professional development. So that really caught my attention. This partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and creative way so that they could develop at their personal and professional best. And I love this. And so began my journey of becoming a coach and diving into the coaching space. And the more I developed and paid attention to those words, the bigger became the value add to my clients. So I'll stop there and let somebody else jump in.
Okay, so this is Anita. So glad to be with everybody too. So I'll take a little different perspective to this thing, looking at how I started the coaching journey. So I was in corporate roles. I was more on the business side, etc., and engineering. HR always was on the other side. But then I was accidentally put in, like Ram said, to say, okay, can you just hold on to this HR portfolio for us? I said, yeah, sure, but I do not have an HR background. Yes, I can connect with people. And I was on the other side of HR. So I wanted to kind of be a little different, to be able to add more value to a function in which I was not born into. So as part of that, I started to look around to see as to what is happening around the world that could be different. And the partnering that Cindy talked about, from a business partner role that was being typically played in HR at that time, I felt could add a lot of value via coaching, because coaching seemed to provide an alternative to be able to understand the other side, the business side, from an HR perspective. Without getting too much of detail, you can't mentor people on the other side within the corporates outside of your function. But what you could do very well, which I started to experiment as an internal coach, was to be able to enable them to find their potential, as ICF calls it. It was just a very uniquely different way. And I think it did help me a whole lot to be a better partner to business, because I had by then stopped being able to be mentoring the right way, because I already stepped out of business. So for me to continually add value within the company, it was important for me to enable and support the leaders to be able to figure out their own ways without me having to mentor. And then, coaching just started therefore, because I wanted to make sure I could continually add value. And in the process, I realized that with the millennials coming in, etc., it was even more important that you don't do a telling, and it was more just asking and allowing them to find their own ways, because that generation is very different from my generation, as you can see. Also experimented with family, with our child that was growing up, to see if that would be different as a parenting tool. And that indeed worked. So that's how I started the journey, and I've been loving it. Now as an external coach, we can go and work with multiple different people without really knowing what they do in that particular company, because maybe it's a different industry. So you can happily coach from outside into different verticals and for different people in that organization without having seen the same story before. So just opened up a whole other landscape for me.
Hi there, this is Shamia. 15 years ago, when I had my first mentor from US, Paul Colgan, who was the head of India, when he was having a session with me, he just mentioned to me that, are you aware of your roles and responsibilities? And I said that, yes, I'm the youngest guy who's got promoted and I'm handling such a big responsibility. I will do well. I don't have any issues. He just asked me one thing: how much do you work on potential? So I said, yeah, potential. Is it not the KRS which we need to work on? What is the targets and how we overgrow it? He said, just work on the potential, Sham. Second thing, ask them what is stopping them from achieving that potential. Until today, in this 15 years, I'm so thankful to him. I have been able to realize the potential with each of my team members, and that spread onto the peer groups and my senior bosses also, for that matter. I did help them through this coaching methodology, and today I can see that there is a huge achievement in each and everybody's life and to that satisfaction levels. And they understand that this is what I am, and the transformation which they get into the different orbit altogether and stay there and keep growing up in their lives has been phenomenal. That's what coaching is all about for me. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, this is Paras, and I would like to share my story about coaching. It started 7 years ago, and I'm into corporate trainings, and I do a lot of behavior workshops. So I used to connect to people, and when I used to talk to them, I used to never get just a hello from them. I used to get people used to talk very deep, sensitive spaces that they would like to share with me, and I never knew what was going on there. And then I realized that when I went to ICF, and coaching was a space that was coming up loud for me. So for me to become a coach, my journey started there. And I got a validation that I was like a sounding board for my clients. So when I was operating as a coach or as a trainer, I never realized that the coaching is not it's like I'm a born coach, or people whom I interacted with in the coaching space who wanted to do coach as a certification. I sense that it's not ICF is not like we're making a coach. It's more that you're a born coach and you are just getting into the space and sharpening your skills. So for me, my journey as being a sounding board supported me a lot, from CEO coaching to millennials who came in. And my work was doing really well when I found that it's so good when you do not provide a solution. You listen to them and ask some powerful questions, and that changes the whole perspective in the client space. And I think that has been my journey in coaching, and there's been a lot of learning in this space. And yeah, so it's great to be a sounding board to your clients, and things change.
So all of you have taken different paths to get to coaching. In your experience in working with prospective coaches, do you find that there are particular characteristics or skills that people have that just make a great coach? Are there any patterns you've seen?
I sincerely would like to start here with the concept of being. All of us are human beings, and that's why we are just, we are not reached yet as a human, and that is why it's called as human being, where all the other animals and other things are called as by the same name. With the process of understanding ourselves first and seeing that, what is our capabilities and what is our potential, because there is a belief issue with us. If we could overcome that part, and if we can see the same similarity to others in terms of how much capable they are to achieve or overcome their potential obstacles, that's the way we can actually look at, if the person is actually connecting the people. And if they're connecting the people, they obviously would have a great camaraderie as well as the listening skills. And if you were to do that, that's a basic start. Certification is just a process.
Magda, would it be possible for us to have some questions from the audience rather than our leading the questions?
Sure. If audience has questions, they can be free to ask them in the chat, and you guys can address them. But in the meantime, I would love to hear a bit more from the panel on the current question, if that's okay. So anyone who has questions, please ask.
So I guess while we're waiting for that to happen, just continuing from where Shyam said, I think the common trait that I see in prospects that are wanting to be coaches, I do find that there's the ability to step out of the comfort zone, to be able to do things differently. From this telling to asking, to say, okay, rather than being a manager, can I be a true leader? And how do I become a true leader? And I think that is something which, of course, there's some hygiene basic stuff like, your ability to connect with people, etc. But I think more importantly, this thing of stepping out of your zone, I think that's what I see commonly in people.
I'm going to add to that. If you are attending this webinar, there's already something stirring inside you that talks about your love for working with people. And that inner voice, it seems like you can't quieten it or deny it. It's a voice that gets louder and louder about how much you love working with people. And people would have already told you by now what a good listener you are and how well you connect and engage with others. These are all qualities you already have in the making of a coach: connecting, listening, and whatever Sham and Anita has already added to it. And of course, you believe that people already have the potential inside them. You've heard this word quite a lot today already, but you have a strong belief in helping people, and you believe that people have some answers and they just need a little bit more help to develop more and more and let that beauty inside them shine out.
So if no one else is jumping in, we're still waiting for questions, audience, so please feel free to contribute. You know, I really like how you described that, Cindy, and you're right, people self-identify in many ways, and if they're here, or they've even registered for the webinar, it just means that there's something that's already stirring inside them where they're thinking about becoming a coach. So maybe let's get a little practical for now as we wait for questions. What are the steps? Are there particular commonalities in a journey that someone must or should take if, you know, today they're thinking about becoming a coach? What are the next steps that they should do? Who wants to jump in? Rob, I'm always going to point to you if no one's going to volunteer.
Yeah, sure. Let me look at it this way. Over the last about close to about 8-9 years, we have trained probably over 600 people, and we have credentialed more than 500 people. Pretty much about 70% of all the ICF credential population in India. Now we are credentialing for other EMCC and so on and so forth. Of this, I find that pretty much 2/3 or more are people from the HR background. For whatever reason, there's a general feeling from people who are not from the HR background that they are not, for some reason, not quite suited to be a coach. And today we find far more people who are actually in employment today, who are professionals and executives who are joining. I would see that as almost about 60+%, as against when I started training, probably there were only about 30-odd% or 25 to 30% who were from the professions. Many of them were people who are practicing on their own, who had been HR professionals before, who were consultants, facilitators, whatever. And they felt that coaching was another kind of tool for them to be more successful. I think there's been a significant change in the market. Today, a person who wants to, at least as far as India is concerned, the situation might be slightly different in other places. One of the questions that I'm very often asked is, aren't there so many coaches out there, and it's going to be very difficult for me? If you look at the global market, from India, there are probably about 500 to 700 credential holders at any point in time. Many of them don't renew their credentials. Overall, globally, there are about 22,000 plus. So we are not even a drop in the ocean. Even in Asia, India's marketplace is much smaller than other places. So there is, in fact, a huge market, not only within India where the market is growing, and also globally because of the fact that we are far more conversant in, proficient in English and so on and so forth. And internet is becoming far more popular. And one of the changes that is happening today is there is a clear differentiation between corporates realizing that there is a clear difference between people calling themselves as coaches without having had any kind of a professional training and those who are really credentialed and professionally trained. Many senior executives today have told me, while they look for people with some experience, they need to have the domain or practical experience. They are also looking for people who are genuinely coaches. And the reason for this is that today in many of the large companies, we find there are people who are already trained coaches who are heading the L&D and HR functions. And I can name the companies. We have trained about 60-70% of those people. I know them personally. So there is a huge difference between the way that they look at earlier. Any guy who worked for a large company in India like Levers or Tata, so somebody who could say, hey, I'm a coach. And he would pretty much not have any of the competencies of a good coach, which we talked about earlier. The most important skill for a coach is not to tell, but to ask, but to listen and create awareness. And as a mentor, all that you are really trying to is to force your experience and expertise on people, which are really not relevant because your DNA is different, the other person is different. These are not sustainable results. So that's one clear difference that I see. There's a huge market which is opening up for people. And in fact, that is shown in our own enrollments because of even though the ICF regulations have become tighter, there are far more people who are today coming into coach training than other people. However, the market is also changing. The market is changing from what it was to looking at coaching as a remedial solution for behavioral issues or to addressing specific performance issues. Today, it's something far more, which is, can we create a coaching culture in the organization? And that's a very, very clear differential that I see. And so many companies are today going in for a form of systemic coaching approach, which also would train their people as coaches, create a coaching culture in the company. So the entire people engagement systems and feedback systems can be rolled around with that. These are some of the things. And there's one, Paras sort of said, in this approach, who goes, I mean, what is the step that you need to take? Do I necessarily have to be an ACC coach first to go to PCC and so on? The answer is, from the regulatory point of view, there is no need. You can go directly to PCC. And the PCC is a professional certified coach as against associate certified coach, which is ACC. My own personal experience is that anyone who's had between 10 and 15 years of corporate experience, who has worked at a relatively mid-senior level of management and who's experienced with handling people, can certainly go directly for PCC and they would benefit much more. The reason also is that when a corporate sponsor is looking for coaches, their minimum specification is usually PCC, not ACC. Because ACC is considered to be, basically, you know what is coaching and what is not coaching. It's very, very fundamental, very basic. Whereas at the PCC level, you get trained far better, and especially through the ACTP approach that we follow, you emerge from the program with enough capability to be a successful coach. So there's an amalgam of stuff. If there is some other point of view that one of you others have, please just add to whatever I have said.
Yeah, just like to add here that most of the clients would obviously expect that, we should be credentialed because of our practices as well as the experience which we seek over a period of time. And since most of the credentials from across the three boards, if you were to see, it's a lot of requirements in terms of, in terms of the number of hours of coach training hours, in terms of the person who is coaching you, as in the sense like training you, and in terms of number of coaching hours which you actually gain. All this actually relate to the professionalism which you are actually giving to the coaching aspect. And that shows that how dedicated you are to get out the transformation from the other person. So when you're dedicated to that level, and it shows that you are a certified coach or an accredited coach, the client would be much more happier. So when across all the levels, when people expect you have to have some credentials, having a credential as an ICF or an AMCC or BCC would really help you in your career. Even if you are in your company and you are as an internal coach, it would really help you to get the best out of your team members. Thank you.
So actually a follow-up to whoever wants to answer this next. It sounds like credentialing is important, but it's becoming more important in terms of building your business of coaching and something that clients are starting to expect, frankly, and demand. But what about the kinds of skills that you gain by going through a credentialing program? Can somebody comment also on that?
So my experience in terms of when I'm delivering sessions, and what I've understood is we have this whole 11 core competencies of ICF, and those, if people are aware, people learn, people who undergo the program, they learn through a structured way of understanding these competencies. And there are various perspectives to understand these competencies, not just about a transactional communication that happens in coaching or learning space. There's a lot of transformational space that can a client feel me as a coach rather than me showing to them that I am a PCC or an MCC or an ACC coach. So I think that's a very important aspect that we need to look into when we are learning through a program, which is a face-to-face or an online program, that you learn through a structured, in-depth, as well as Eastern and Western philosophies of coaching and different aspects and modalities that are required in coaching space. So to put that in a statement, I would look at it as having an understanding about the 11 core competencies, and not just knowing it, but having it, experiencing it in yourself as a being, what Shyam said. If that can be touched, I think things can evolve a lot for a coach.
Magda, I'll just step in. There is also a question from Anuradha. External and internal coaches. There is certainly, not just in India, worldwide, there's a much greater demand for internal coaches, simply for the reason that coaching has become, at the right level, an expensive proposition. Then I go back to the earlier question that Magda asked. If you look at people who are not credentialed, anyone who's coming in and calling themselves coaches, so you can start pretty much at the bottom of a fee structure. But if you're really looking for someone whose experience and whose effectiveness is proven, it's going to be fairly expensive. So in that sense, many companies are today looking for making it more cost effective, and they are looking at internal coaches. So the trend worldwide is today certainly a far greater increase in internal coaches than external coaches. There's no question about it. But having said that, there are two ways because of which this is getting mitigated. One is the effectiveness of coaching, the cost effectiveness of coaching is being increased by team coaching rather than individual coaching alone. And therefore, as long as the coaches are being sensible about it, and you don't say that if I'm going to coach 5 people, I'm going to charge 5 times that I'm going to charge one person, which is pretty idiotic. But if you are looking at from the number of hours that you are spending and keeping it pretty much the same, and you're willing to work with a larger number of people, you can make it much more cost effective. What's happening in the market, as I see it, is that at the middle management level, and maybe even at a low-level, senior-level management, if you were to call that as a category, say general management level and so on, many companies are resorting to internal coaching, which would then involve people who are more senior managers, who are more mentors. They are getting trained as coaches. So in fact, we run a program for internal coaching as transforming mentor managers into leader coaches. And it makes a huge difference in terms of attitude, in terms of how they do that. Now, having said that, most companies that I know personally are looking for external coaches for senior leadership. Anyone in most companies who are at the senior VP level or P&L leaders and so on and so forth. One of the simple reasons is this, and this is true at all levels as well. There's a point up to which people are willing to confide in another person within that organization, even if that person is coming from a completely different division or from a different country. I work with multinational, And there are coaches who are coming from US or Europe or wherever it is for the Indian managers. But still, and this is basically the truth as well, there is only a bamboo curtain, and that is porous. Because at the end of the day, that person who's a coach who's employed by the organization, is his or her loyalty is to the company. And the individuals who are clients are very, very aware of that. And therefore, they will not clearly open up to that person to the same extent as they would to an external coach. So this is going to always restrict the depth to which internal coaching can be applied, which then necessarily leads to this secondary conclusion. And many people may debate that, but in real life, I have found this to be absolutely true with every single senior leader that I have coached. The coaching remains transactional. So you can work with an internal coach, and what happens is really some amount of performance improvement in certain ways up to a certain point, but it's never, ever going to be transformational. And I'll take a very, very simple example. Every single person that I coach, I work with them on a life journey for the next 20 years, which obviously means that these people are not looking at their journey within the company. They are looking elsewhere. And if I had been an internal coach, they will never, ever open up with me. Because I'm an external coach and I make it very, very clear to them and the company that my loyalty is to the client and not to the company. And that is one of the reasons why companies hire me. The extent to which they are willing to open up their life relationships, their life ambitions, aspirations, and so on, and how they interact with that of the work is something completely different, which in turn enhances their capability at the work that they are doing. So companies have to find much better ways than what they are looking at today in terms of how to deploy the blend of internal and external coaching so that the maximum benefit can accrue to leadership development.
So I've got a couple of follow-up questions actually about that, Ram. So if somebody is thinking that about being an internal coach versus external coach, is the process, the training, is it any different between the two, or are the paths pretty similar?
No, it's all the same. There's a bit of a statement in coaching, which might be a cliche, that all coaching at the end of the day is life coaching. So whether you are an internal coach, external coach, whether you call yourself an executive coach or a life coach or a grief coach or good grief wellness coach or whatever nonsense it is, any niche that you choose, the fundamental training that you go through, the skills that you need to acquire are pretty much the same. The market for the internal coach is getting larger. That's absolutely true. And therefore, I find more and more people and more companies reaching out today and say, hey, will you come and coach within our companies? Will you train our people? So we are working on schemes which will make it easier for them. All I'm saying is that there is finally going to be a market for external coaches as well. So those internal coaches themselves, as and when they plan to move out of the companies and want to establish their own practice, put up their own shingle as it were, they would be just as capable as any external coach or vice versa. Apurva has some questions.
Yeah, I actually would like Paras to take that one if possible. The question, please panelists read the question, but basically it is, if clients are looking to hire coaches with PCC credentials, are they also looking at the corporate experience that the coach has had?
So thanks Apurva for the question. To my understanding, wisdom not always comes always with the age, it also comes with the awareness. So when you're going through any programs, whether you are doing your ACC, PCC, or MCC, as long as apart from coaching, you come from your own domain expertise of your life experience. So when I say domain expertise, is not your credentials or qualification, but your life experience. So when we look at corporate, it's not that, okay, if I'm an ACC, I would not get it, or a PCC, I would always prefer. It's preferred word. However, you could have your own branding, your own marketing. How are you having your own setup? Like, do you have, when people have their own dreams that, okay, I want to be something, and you already have your own brand creation, even if you're an ACC, people would go for it. So it's not that having a less experience would, it depends upon, how are you branding yourself and what kind of client list and what is your networking space. So, because even after doing PCC or MCC, clients don't search. You also have to have your own brand creation. So for me, when people come for training, the worst thing that all coaches do not like is branding themselves. And I feel that that's one aspect one we cannot ignore. Even I hated the same. But I realized in the past 3 years that it is important to reach out to clients to know you. And once they know you and they can feel you, I think whether you're an ACC or PCC or MCC, clients are going to ask you for your services. So that's something from my end, Magda.
No, that's very helpful. And others, please jump in. But I did want to say that we have some content on our blog, and we've had previous sessions in our monthly colloquiums on building your coaching business. And we actually have a session coming up on June 20th. If you go to coacharya.com/events, you can register. And I promise that you'll get a reminder, unlike for this webinar, which I know didn't happen. But we'll have a couple coaches from different places in the world talk about how they've built their business and, very different backgrounds. So hopefully you can get a bit more insight on that aspect as well. But yeah, does anybody else want to jump in on?
Yeah, Martha, I just want to add something to what Paras says, and others can add to that. Generally, my own experiences, there's a difference between what happens in the corporate world and when clients individually seek out a coach. And what Paras says is absolutely true. When you are able to establish as a coach your own credibility and visibility, and I've known some people who have been extraordinarily successful. In fact, one of the coaches that we have trained today is, if you type down executive coach in such and such a space, his name comes up as number 1. And that he has done is just basically exploited the power of LinkedIn. And so his name immediately comes up. And occasionally when I reach out to him and say, look, there is this corporate assignment, would you be interested? He says, Ram, if you really need me, I'll come, but otherwise I'm quite busy. And I love to hear that. That's really fantastic. However, the moment you go into the corporate space, a typical L&D manager, it's like the truism that in the olden days, that however bad it might have been, if you chose an IBM computer, nobody would blame you. But if you were to choose something else, which was less well known, and if it didn't work, they would jump on you. The same way, the corporate L&D personnel who choose coaches would typically look for a PCC coach. Having an MCC credential is not necessarily a great advantage in being an executive coach. It's a personal discovery and personal journey. Whereas there is a clear differential between being a PCC coach and ACC coach. My own experience is that many companies today, for instance, I'm quite happy to give the name, Tata's, for instance, very clearly specify in their RFPs that you need to be a PCC coach, and many other companies too. And they also do specify that you have to have some amount of corporate experience. So there is a reality out there that if you've, at certain levels, the companies are going to look for people who have walked the talk, and therefore they have the corporate experience or leadership experience and who have PCC coaching. But at the same time, there is also a huge market that is opening up today. Which is with the women leaders, which is with millennials, who do not necessarily respect gray hair, who do not necessarily respect the fact that you have experience. They are really looking for, like Paras said, how do I connect with that person? Am I able to talk to that person and be able to learn more about myself? And so that market is certainly increasing, and that is likely to increase far more. Abroad, I see in the United States, in fact, there's absolutely, you know that, Mark, that there is a much greater population of younger coaches who are coming up today. And that is certainly going to happen. Asia is a little more hierarchical, a little more paternalistic and all that stuff. But I see that changing pretty rapidly in the corporate structure. So for those of you, for those of people like Apurva, for example, My own suggestion would be this, that start getting yourself grounded in coaching by working with younger people with whom you can probably resonate better. These could be even people who have just joined industries. They could be startup entrepreneurs. There are large communities out there. We just don't reach them. And when you start working with them and you gain the experience, you will also become a specialist in that particular area. It is, both are true. If you go to the typical hierarchical corporate environment, they are going to look for people with more experience and with a certain amount of credentials. Whereas if you're really able to promote yourself and establish yourself as someone who's charismatic, you would certainly be able to do successfully yourself.
I'd just like to add in over here. One thing is that I think even though, we would like to feel that the India market is kind of more mature, or what it used to be for sure, but it is still nascent as far as what I can see. There are still stereotypes that exist in the corporate worlds looking at what type of coaches will really fit us. So it is definitely, as Ram said, the L&D expertise or the HR gatekeepers that will kind of say this is a cookie cutter. I've had experiences where one of the first few that I got into, I was first put on the hold side as a coach because they asked me if I was from IIM. I said no. They said, okay, some other institutes. I said, no, I haven't done MBA. And they were like, no, but all our people are all MBAs and IIT materials. So how will you be able to coach them? Now, me with all my corporate experience and with gray hair, I couldn't cut it. But then today they happen to be one of my largest, people that I'm coaching within that same organization. Maybe it's also because they did not find enough number of coaches from IIT, IIM combination and corporate experience and PCC. So a whole lot of ands over there. So requirements that they were looking for was obviously not being met. So as coaches, while the industry is growing up, I think we have a huge market to be able to capitalize. And as Dr. Paras said, market in the right spaces. And there is, I think, ample opportunity out there. Millennials, etc., for people that do not have corporate expertise, a great place again. So I think I just wanted to state that, as well as the bias. Sometimes the stereotypes that are there in India, I was surprised to be asked to say, do I know of any male coaches in the NCR region who are certified? And I said, what is this? So, and that is the reality. So sometimes we just have to bite it, but it's okay. We're in the early stages, and the faster that we are in that marketplace, when the marketplace booms, we'll be right there. That's the way I see it.
And I'm just going to continue from what Anita is saying. So as a coach, you've got to be pretty bold, right? And you've got to take some risks and some chances, just like how we encourage our clients to do so. And what I'm about to say may resonate with many of you who's taken a break or want a career change. When I started my coach training, I had come off from taking a break of 7 years to raise my kids. And I worked very limited hours, which was when children were at school, I worked. The longer they stayed at school, the more I worked. But that didn't stop me from continuously developing myself as a coach and giving myself this uniqueness as a coach, as Dr. Paras had mentioned, and standing out, like becoming either an executive coach or a leadership coach. And I had no corporate background around coaching senior managers or working with senior people when I won a tender to do coaching within our South African government. So it's about taking a bit of risk, putting yourself out there and believing in yourself that you can do this. You can be a coach, you can brand yourself, and believe in the abilities you have, the talents, gifts, and abilities you have in what you are doing. So it does require some boldness on your part too. Magda, there was another question you were going to raise, right?
There's a few, so if you've seen them and you want to just jump in and answer them, please go. I have others.
Magda, in the meanwhile, I just wanted to, take it from Cindy and Anita about, we talk about being an ACC or PCC credential. for corporates. But we also discounting one fact that there's so much market for private practice as a coach, because today in Pune and Mumbai that I work, I have so many clients who are not from the corporate, but they have their own business or their business family, and they do not know who is PCC and ACC, but what they know is, or they got a reference and they would like to connect. So I think as a private practice as a coach, whether you're an ACC, PCC, or MCC, there's a huge market. As long as you have a vision and eagle's eye, I think you can tap that out. So for me, it's more about not only just corporate, but today I do a lot of private practice and coaching, and it's a huge market for them.
Yeah, actually, I want to comment on that too a little bit. So, I'm based in Chicago, but I think as you're thinking about becoming a coach and about building your business, you should definitely focus on where you are and try to leverage the advantage of being local and, meet people in person. But I know Ram does a lot of coaching, for example, virtually. And, all of us are speaking right now via Zoom virtually. And I find that in the US, especially, there's a big trend for virtual coaching. And when people are looking for a coach, they're looking for that fit, for that chemistry, not necessarily someone who's based, in the same city as they are. And the advantage I think that coaches in India bring is the unique cultural experience that I think a lot of people in Western countries just don't have by default. And, when we talk to prospects for training with Coach Arya, a big aspect that they like is the balance of Eastern and Western methodologies that we cover in our programs. Because in Western programs, Western, I shouldn't say Western, but non-Coach Arya programs, that isn't necessarily covered. And people in Western countries also, they seek that holistic experience. They seek that kind of relationship with a coach that's going to nurture them as a person, not just, help them excel in business with the tricks they already know from their MBA, etc. So I think don't discount marketing yourself as a global coach that happens to be based in India. Borders are, they're disappearing. And I think opportunities are opening up everywhere. So that's my 2 cents.
Just to add here, Magda, I can just state here that after 40 years, everybody will be thinking that, what else to do, and whether to be a CEO or having a BMW or how many villas in the house, in your estate. Whereas I chose, at 42 to say that, yes, this is my cup of tea, and I have been doing this for the last 3 years when I quit my company. And, I was at a good level in banking, but when I met Ram and I just explored this part, he told me that there's a sweet spot analysis which states that you connect with people very well and you want to get into the transformation mode for each and every one. And to state what Suhas actually has mentioned, when is it the right time to move to coaching space completely? When is it your heart says that and you're completely having finances to back it up? And then you say that, yes, for 1 or 2 years, I could manage this part, just kick into it. And for the last 3 years, I've been an executive coach, leadership coach. And as Magda mentioned, I actually coach US clients virtually for the last 1.5 years, and the accolades is very high. And they say that, how do you combine this Eastern philosophy as well as the Western methodologies? So I say that this is how it goes. And I have been certified by Coach Arya, and I've been going through several mentoring, actually, in fact, with several webinars, which he conducts with Ram, as well as, in International Coaching Week, which we come across. There's a lot more learnings. And if you were to say on that point, to become an independent person today, I can say you have to have a complementary way of working. So I do coaching, I do coach training programs, I do leadership training programs, I do mentoring. These are all complementary programs. So you can't specifically state that coaching is one-to-one and just stick to that. You have to be a businessman at the end of the day. You have to look into different aspects and move ahead in that direction. Thanks, Magda.
And that is absolutely excellent. Shyam, what you said, and we have worked with several people. And so far, in my last almost about 10 years of work with various people in India, I haven't found a single person who really had the desire to make it successful fail. If you sit there and say, hey, nothing is happening, nothing is going to happen. Shyam is a very good example. There are many others before them whom I had trained. When they had a passion saying that's what it is, yes, you struggle, certainly. You are going to initially, but when you leave an organization, and you start on your own, there is going to be a certain time. There is going to be a certain loss of confidence at that point in time. So it's like a hero's journey. You have a call and you listen to your heart and you move forward. At that point in time, you have to look for someone to support, which is a role that many of us have performed over a period of time. You'll have to find somebody, like what somewhere Suhas said, to have another coach or a mentor to tally. If by that you mean that to support you and go in tandem, yes, surely that's one way. Another is, if you have worked before in a certain corporate circle, a domain or whatever, try and use that niche, that network, that Rolodex to start initially. If you're able to get some kind of a retainer with someone, try and see how much that uncertain future can be made certain to a certain extent. And if you have the passion for it, you will succeed. So you really have to look at it from a problem of plenty rather than a problem of scarcity. That's I mean, in a very general way. And that is what we train people to in our programs. There is a self-discovery process where we take you through in order, I think Shyam mentioned the sweet spot in terms of what is it that your passion lies in and how can you look towards a future that you can visualize and you can come back and start doing it. So there's another question Anuradha had asked about, see, the point is, believe you me, Marshall is a very good friend of mine, so I don't want to say too much about the stake-centered coaching kind of stuff. When you do a weekend program of 2 days, and which is based on a book that you can buy for 300 rupees and you pay 2 lakhs for it, what value you get out of it in terms of practicing, and there are many others who come on that. It really doesn't cut much ice. Today, more and more corporates have people who have gone through, be it ICF, be it equivalents. Mostly ICF is popular in India. We are trying to popularize EMCC. BCC is very popular in the United States. These have a certain rigor. They all look for about 100 to 200 hours of training. And they all look for people who've been trained properly to be able to do that, to understand a coaching framework. Just saying all that you do is to, I mean, I love Marshall's book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. I use it with many of my clients as well. But the point is, just by saying that you have someone to keep pushing you, that you have to do that, that alone is going to help you move forward, is not quite right. There are exceptions like Marshall who can do it. But the average person who is a mentor, who comes from a corporate background, who doesn't even know how to listen, unless he has the ability to... My biggest problem when I started out as a coach was I was used to the approach of being directed. And the single biggest change that happened to me that I started listening. And only by listening to someone, you can ask powerful questions, you can communicate. And from there, you can create awareness. So temporarily, yeah, there are lots of, the marketing is very strong. I have had people who have done Gallup Strength Finder coaching for huge amounts of money and then come back and say, my God, how am I going to use it? So, you know, at the end of the day, yeah, there are multiple choices out there. But my own money, I would bet on structured coaching approaches which make a difference, which follow a certain framework. And the MCC journey, to answer your second question, is a very personal journey. Because the Mount Everest is there, I want to climb it. Because the bungee jumping is there, I want to bungee jump, or whatever. So you need to have that absolute passion within you that I want to excel, that I want to better myself. And if you set those kind of yardsticks for yourself, yes, surely, and you will differentiate yourself and you will become a far, far better coach than you are as a PCC. There's absolutely no question about it. But is it what is required from a corporate level of coaching? Perhaps not today. But once the numbers of MCCs increases and there's going to be a competition between the numbers of MCC available and PCCs, I would certainly see that people will see the difference between someone who's gone through a mastery journey. So what we are trying to do to address this is, believe you me, we train people from day one as if they are being inducted into a mastery program. So today, when I listen to recordings of people who are in the ACC journey, I see them performing at the level of PCCs, absolutely, without which we do not really certify them. And at the level of PCC, pretty much almost everybody who goes through the ACTP evaluation with Cindy, they are performing at the borderline of mastery. And with a little bit more refinement, they would become master coaches. So, but from a purely market validation point of view, I would say that if you are a PCC, it's reasonably good. But constantly, if you're working on improving yourself and perhaps get a lot more parallel viewpoints in terms of neuro-linguistic programming, appreciative inquiry, transaction analysis, and so on. Like, for example, Paras has completed his NLP programming and transaction analysis. Everyone is in something or other. They are enhancing their own capabilities. So that constant learning makes a huge difference in your value of being a coach.
And Ram, I just want to add to this. Coaches, if you're looking for a coach training program, my advice to you, I know we don't give advice, but I'm going to do so now, is to find an ACTP program. To go with an ACTP program, because the value adds built into a program, an ACTP, is enormous, meaning the coaching, the mentoring part, a bit of supervision comes in, the value of your assignments and somebody checking it, repeatedly doing practice sessions and getting feedback on it. So there's enormous value on an ACTP. And the other thing I want to add is, you've heard Ram say and Paras say that the MCC is an extremely personal journey. It is very personal. It's like from the moment you start coach training, you know the end post is MCC and you want to go there. No two ways about that. It's human nature. But the value had afterwards is enormous. You get opportunities and doors opening that you yourself question, this looks like another growth point for me, so I'm going to take this and grow within it. So MCCs will tell you that it's a personal journey with huge external value adds.
So also to add, Cindy, from Ram and Cindy's point about MCC versus PCC, I look at it from another perspective is, let's say I would like to swim in 5 feet, I like to swim in 50 feet, and I like to swim in 5,000 feet water. So it's all up to what is your interest going in the deep space of coaching. And I think that has helped me a lot as a coach in my journey from PCC to MCC in life, where it was more about till the time you go to MCC, it is not a goal oriented. It's a journey itself. And I'm sure Cindy would be able to back me for this, because I went through that journey of complete space of, just experiencing about myself more as a person. And that helped me a lot to be like a hollow bamboo completely, as much transparent, as much crystal clear in while interacting with my clients. So I call it as where you are not there in your coaching space. The client is totally there and you are communicating with the client, with his agenda and working with it. And when you have a lot of experience, something in you keeps on proving it to yourself that I'm a better coach, or I want to prove it to myself, or I want to prove it to my client. But MCC is absolutely a very different space. It's not about proving, it's about just surrendering to the client space and creating that space for the client to explore and expand his thinking process.
And I just think it's worth mentioning that with Coach Arya, if any of you who are on this webinar want to join us and train with us, our goal is that you stick with us for your entire training journey. So whether you start with ACC or PCC, we have at least one cohort for towards the MCC, the mastery. So the journey can continue with us, and in between we offer monthly webinars, at least, if not more, to make sure that even if you aren't doing, the more advanced credentials, you continue learning, and we support you in that, in your journey as a coach. All right, there's one more question. If one of the panelists wants to jump in on that, but otherwise, I'm just mindful of time. We are at the end of our hour. So I would love to hear from all the panelists, just some closing thoughts, perhaps some advice for anyone who is watching today and is thinking of becoming a coach. What do you think will help them to make the right decision moving forward?
And very briefly.
Very briefly.
So I'll go very quickly. So if somebody is in the corporate attempting to or contemplating ACC or PCC or whatever, the right time to apply for the certification is while you're in the corporate. So they can kind of get your hands dirty with coaching, try that in the internal coaching environment. You'll be an internal coach, but more importantly, you have clients right there. So you can practice it without the tension of going out and doing business development while you're trying to get the hours. So best time to do that is in the corporate. And then once you feel comfortable, you jump out, external coaching, with the same skill set.
So I'll go next. The ICF has a goal that in the next 10 years, everybody should experience coaching. It's a social goal. So we're not going to run short of coaches. Coaches are always going to be wanted, right? So if you're thinking of becoming a coach, explore it further.
I would like to add here, it's a $2 billion industry. Would you like to be a part of this? One. Second thing is, please, if you want to grow your business, the best investment is to now start your training. So register now.
So I think if you get in touch with your head, heart, and instincts and intuitions, what does it really talk about yourself? You're already ready for this. You are already a coach. You just need to check and sharpen your saw with us. So I think if your intuition and gut says that, hey, you're ready, just go with it.
Yeah, I just want to address Suhas's question here as sort of closing now. One of the things that I have found is pretty much almost everything that you want to learn at the first level, try and do it, experiment with it free of cost. So if you want to go for a Gallup training, read the book. It costs you $300. Or go and look at some YouTube videos and so on and so forth. And then if you find it sufficiently attractive, and I certainly would recommend psychological interventions as a far better investment in coaching than all this other fancy footwork, which lasts for 1 week or 2 weeks at the most. And there are things like positive psychology, Martin Seligman's, and there are various other approaches, transaction analysis and Gestalt and so on and so forth, which have been seen over time to be effective. Many of them have a lot of material that's available on the web. And then go for whoever is the best. Don't go for something because it is cheap. And like, for example, Paras has just come back from training with Richard Bandler. If you're going for training with NLP, go for Richard Bandler. If you're going for training with positive psychology, go to Martin Seligman. Go to whoever is at the top of the field and try to understand from them. And that is why we are focusing that every one of our trainers would be an MCC coach. And that is an aspiration. Not for any other reason, not just because it's a credential, like as others said, it's a journey. And you certainly, as Cindy said, to you, it makes a difference when you're an MCC coach. You coach better. There is no question about it. And you are a lot more vulnerable. Your humility is far greater. And you know that you are performing at a better level. And therefore, at the end of the day, that is all I would leave with you. When you want to first find out something, is it worthwhile for you to go deeper? Don't pay money. Read a book. Many of them are available as free PDFs on the web. or YouTube or MOOC, whatever it is. And then once you've decided that I want to become a master at that, go for the best. It's always cheaper in the long run.
Some good advice there. Well, we will finish up now. For anyone who is listening live, you all have my email address. Please feel free to just email and ask any additional questions. We are here to help you on your coaching journey. And to anyone who is watching this webinar on YouTube, please always feel free to go to coacharya.com and just click on contact wherever you see it. There's no obligation to join us to ask questions. We are here to help on this wonderful path you're thinking about taking. So for tonight, we will say goodbye and thank you everyone for listening and attending. Good luck with whatever is next for you.
Thank you.
Bye.
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 Good night.
Bye.